LinkedIn, to its credit, has remained that space exclusively for professional development and business. They've just actually eclipsed 1 billion monthly active users. So it is a true force to be reckoned with. So over time, I perfected an internal system that when we launched Relentless Venture Studio, it's on our basic list of initial initiatives at every company to tune up the LinkedIn profiles of the principals, particularly the sales teams, and then create predictability in lead generation and lead nurturing with LinkedIn. Last year, I launched a new company called Linked VA Now, and that company marries the technology and the automated system with an actual, we're based here in the United States, onshore account management team that manages your LinkedIn profile for you and turns it into what we like to refer to as a lead goldmine.
Speaking about investments, about M&A for small, medium companies in the SaaS industry, we're going to be speaking about utilizing your LinkedIn profile, LinkedIn pages, with the help of an innovative AI solution. My guest today is Charles Gerenser. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He's a partner in Relentless Venture Studio. We're specifically going to be speaking about this innovative company. But first, welcome, Charles.
Thank you so much, Zarina. I appreciate you having me on as a guest.
My pleasure.
And the last name, it was almost perfect. My ancestors are from Hungary. So here in the United States, my last name is Gerenser. In Hungary, it's Gerencir.
Okay. So now we have it both ways for all kinds of listeners.
Yes.
Fantastic. Great. You're based in LA. Tell us a bit
about... north of Los Angeles. We're about 3 hours north of Los Angeles in California and 3 hours south of San Francisco. So right on the coast between the two big cities.
I see.
And our hometown here is San Luis Obispo. And it is a city on the California mission trail. So there's a Catholic mission that was founded, 250 years ago. And so that is in the center of town. It's a pretty small city, but we do have a very large polytechnic university here, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And so from that center, emits a lot of cultural relevance, as well as quite a bit of entrepreneurship and a huge startup community. And so that has been the impetus for our work at Relentless Venture Studios, is to initially bring opportunity to the startup stage for our immediate market area. Because again, we are outside of Los Angeles and San Francisco, which are major hubs. And so our initial startup with the Relentless Venture Studio back in 2018 was to work on a few of our initial company investments and then also become mentors to the broader community, which include the local university and the startups, which are, some are student funded, some are faculty funded. Others are just coming from the general community and supporters. And this is a scenario we see playing out in markets all over the United States as well as all over the world, where from the college and university there is innovation and ideas, and then many try and fail, but some have that novel concept, that initial idea, launch into market, and then just need help getting out of the earliest stages. And that's where our firm had initially, spent our first few years in terms of investing and investigating and partnering.
I see. So after these first initial years, this means that you're now also investing and you're also managing some of the companies. It's you're not only you're stepping in as a partner in some of the companies. So you're still investing only in startups from the area, from coming out of this university, or has your geographical span increased now.
Yeah, it actually has expanded outside of our area and into other Western markets, as well as I think one of our companies is based in Minnesota, another one in Florida. So, I mean, it at the end of the day, it's really about the people. We've done a lot to foster opportunity in our local market. We host a quarterly mixer where we give all sorts of interesting, very early stage startup folks a chance to pitch their ideas to a broader audience. And so that's our primary role with the local market, is really to support informally. Most of our direct investments from the venture studio are in companies that are outside of our immediate market. Yeah.
Okay.
Initially, the companies were almost all focused on SMB market. So think small businesses. We have two companies actually that focus on the restaurant and hospitality industries. We have another marketplace technology platform that focuses on boutique retail. So the small mom and pop businesses that were in a retail environment was our initial focus. As the company grew and matured, we got into more advanced technologies, but there is a convergence of our businesses and our systems on small retail as well as individual entrepreneur businesses. So not the Fortune 5,000 or 500, but smaller businesses than that.
And while you've been a partner for a few years, how many years have you been a partner for in this?
So this is the sixth year. And the pandemic was transformative for us. We entered the pandemic in spring of 2020. We had 5 companies in our portfolio, and during that time, we attracted quite a few founders who were looking for help and assistance in navigating the uncertainty, the economic uncertainty of that time. Things started to open up once a vaccine was widely available, and we can sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel. But we sit here today in spring of 24, and we're at 16 companies in the portfolio. I don't know that we'd be at 16 companies today if it weren't for the pandemic, because it did bring us a ton of opportunity where startups were in distress because they did not know how to navigate the opportunities. Here in the United States anyway, I mean, there was some support coming from different government sectors, but if you're an early stage startup, you have sometimes little to no revenue. And a lot of that help was exclusively reserved for businesses that had 2 years of trailing financials and that sort of thing. So there was a secondary market for businesses that were still in the early stages, and so we became a resource. And I would say from spring of 21 to the end of 2022, that 18-month period, we evaluated over 1,000 companies that came to us unsolicited, just knew that here's a smaller scale venture studio that is helping founders realize the potential of their startups, and that's where our work was sort of during those those unprecedented times, as the pandemic business normalized.
Yeah. And ever since you had such an inflow of leads, have you started using LinkedIn, for example, to provide leads, or do you have other channels for the leads for your venture capital? Because I know that we talked before we started recording about one of the companies that you're involved in a managerial function as well, and one of the companies that you've invested in that has to do with LinkedIn AI generating leads through LinkedIn. Yeah. And so do you use it for the venture capital as well?
Well, it's interesting. So I'm present on LinkedIn. I'm a very easy person to find there. And because I am a partner at a venture studio, I really don't have a shortage of inbound, unsolicited leads, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I have more happening sort of in an inbound direction than I could possibly handle. I actually have a team that works on that. But you mentioned LinkedIn specifically, and before I get into that, I wanted to kind of walk back and sort of unpack one other thing you said, because you mentioned that at the venture studio we also manage companies, and that is true. So some of our businesses were invested, as I said, in 16 companies in the portfolio. Some of the businesses are there's a founder who created the business a better way, if you will, for a particular business problem, and then we invested in and support that founder and their team, and that's more the traditional venture model. But we also have businesses that we've invested and acquired, and internally we have a program where we actually have teams that work on the various businesses. And because my background personally, before being a partner in the venture studio, was as a C-level executive, I've partitioned myself out to a handful of projects where I'm actually running those businesses with siloed teams and sort of doing it where I can appreciate economies of scale because I have shared resources.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good model, and one that we think in the medium to long term will generate tremendous value when we have the opportunity to exit some of these companies, as we've done in a handful of circumstances. And the goal in venture is to invest and exit. Invest less than what you exit for, right? That's where the wealth creation happens. And so,
have you had an IPO yet, or is
no,
it?
no. I've been a public company executive. So in that particular circumstance, it wasn't during the Relentless era. It was prior to that. We are always investigating the public markets as an option when there's a need for capital. And interesting on that is that there are so many other ways now to fundraise besides the big boards. So we've looked at and been involved indirectly with some of the OTC markets. The Toronto Stock Exchange is a really interesting opportunity for companies. It doesn't have to be NYSE or NASDAQ exclusively. And then, of course, crowdfunding has become a really emerging opportunity that has not only democratized the investor side. People can get invested for as little as $200, right? But it has also given founders a way to raise money without the overburden of the legal expense related to traditional public offerings. So those are interesting markets. And honestly, the IPO itself isn't really where wealth is created, because typically founders will convert from their private ownership into stock, but that stock is often locked up, and so it really has no value until there's a liquidity event. And liquidity events can have an adverse effect on the price of the stock. So it's kind of a mixed bag. If somebody is looking to be rich, the IPO model is not necessarily the way to do it. In fact, you'd want to remain privately held as long as you possibly could. The public markets are for advanced scale, and once the interest is well beyond the means of an individual entrepreneur, that's when things like IPOs make sense. So we're playing in a part of the market that is sub 25 million. So the IPOs and things of that nature don't necessarily make sense for us.
Mm-hmm.
But go ahead.
No, I mean, it's very interesting that you walked me through your investment thesis, but I was actually asking about the companies that you've divested in, that you've sold already, but I suppose they're also not going for IPO.
Yeah, because we're typically getting involved in the startup to $500,000 in monthly recurring revenue space. So our exits typically happen to larger private equity groups or strategic partners in the various verticals. And so they may be public or they may take a division public. That's not typically the work that we're looking at doing. Although it is something that we've investigated at different times relative to a particular company's needs, as well as their plans. Personally, I think the public markets are fine, but it brings another level of work that is exclusive to the public company experience, and that is largely surrounding legal compliance, as well as the various fiduciary responsibilities, the quarterly reporting, the annual meetings. I mean, it's expensive to run a public company. And so if your revenues aren't, 9 figures or higher, I mean, it really is something that needs to be evaluated as to the cost benefit of that type of a move. But it is definitely an interesting thing. And I do like the fact that there's been increased democratization through crowdfunding. So there are just other innovative ways to raise money. But what doesn't change, whether you raise $1 million or 10 million or 100 million, is you now have a level of accountability well beyond the accountability you might be experiencing as an individual entrepreneur. I mean, most people get into business for themselves, with themselves, because they want to be the boss. They don't necessarily want to be accountable to people. Right. But the day you take an investor's money, you're now beholden to the investor. And there's a big trade-off there, and it's certainly not for everybody.
Are you struggling to make the right decisions for your business? Do you find yourself constantly changing strategies without seeing any significant impact? Join my free 60-minute session designed to unleash your genius and empower you to make brilliant decisions. Here's what you can expect to learn from the Genius Decision Making class. Activate both your logical and creative minds simultaneously to solve problems effortlessly. How to identify prime strategies for growth and profitability using your genius mind. Collaboratively construct profitable business models and strategies. Don't miss the opportunity to elevate your decision-making skills and drive growth in your business. Sign up on the link below or go to business-intuition.com for more information. Thank you very much for this extensive introduction into the Relentless Venture Studios. Yeah.
You mentioned LinkedIn, and that's a really interesting dynamic. I'm glad you mentioned it, because one of the cornerstones of our business, and I would say this predates Relentless, going back to my work. I was actually a newspaper publisher, believe it or not, 15 years ago. And so I was involved in the media space, and, things like one's personal brand were things that I worked on almost subconsciously. And it was 2008 when I personally got involved with LinkedIn. And almost from day one, going back to 2008, I realized the power of LinkedIn as a force for good in my business, because different from all other social channels, LinkedIn aimed to be, at the time, exclusive to business. So it wasn't the place to share your children's birthday photos. It was the place to announce your new position at a new firm, or the place to conduct a poll, or share a demo of your new product, whatever it may be. And here we sit some 16 years later, and LinkedIn, to its credit, has remained that that space exclusively for professional development and business. And so with that said, they've just actually eclipsed 1 billion monthly active users. So it is a true force to be reckoned with. But there is a nuance to managing LinkedIn. Initially, everyone has a personal profile. What does your personal profile say about you? And that is a question that most folks have trouble answering. In fact, one of the more common things I hear about when I discuss LinkedIn with people is that their LinkedIn profile is out of date, or that they don't pay attention to it, or they don't even remember where the messages are going. It was an email from 3 emails ago that that the stuff is going to. So it is being, I think, masterfully worked by about 3% of the market, and then 97% of the market is not effectively using it. So going back to 2008, and then my evolution out of being a media person and into being a technologist, I created workflows within my internal systems for the companies that I worked at, where LinkedIn became a place that we would generate opportunity. And whether that opportunity meant finding new customers, finding partnerships, I knew then that I could do it on LinkedIn. And it was a very manual, very rigorous program. I mean, at one point in the early 2010s, I had teams that just managed LinkedIn profiles. Mid 2010s, you see the emergence of automation technology, and some of it good, some of it bad, actually most of it bad, that would grow your LinkedIn network, but do it in a sort of irresponsible and not particularly effective way. So over time, I perfected an internal system that when we launched Relentless Venture Studio, it's on our basic list of initial initiatives at every company to tune up the LinkedIn profiles of the principals, particularly the sales teams, and then create predictability in lead generation and lead nurturing with LinkedIn. And so between 2018 and 2022, we perfected it down to where we actually built software that does all of these things managed by an internal team. And then last year,
you actually built this company. I thought you acquired it.
Yeah. So we acquired some of the base technology, but we built a company. It's actually called Castanet. And that is a system that can do what power users on LinkedIn do, just do it 10 times better. I mean, that's kind of the best way to describe it in a nutshell. But it's focused on outreach campaigns and network growth to actually then take the growing of the network and the outreach and turn it into actionable leads. That takes another step. And that step has to do with the actual lead nurturing that happens on a LinkedIn lead and turn it into a monetizable, actionable lead in your traditional CRM program, whatever that may be. Yeah. And so last year, I launched a new company called Linked VA Now. And that company marries the technology and the automated system with an actual, we're based here in the United States, onshore account management team that manages your LinkedIn profile for you and turns it into what we like to refer to as a lead goldmine. So, and that's something that is a system I perfected internally for all of my internal companies. And then it's sort of our secret sauce. And then we've turned that into an articulation that is now at market. And we've had about 450% growth in that space, basically this year over the tail end of last, and hundreds of accounts under management. And there's a lot of demand because people know LinkedIn is powerful. They just don't really know how to necessarily do it themselves. And so we are able to enter into the system, work on behalf of our clients, and get them the outputs that matter, which are the qualified leads, willing to have the consultation, willing to invest in their own opportunities. And so we're finding success in all sorts of industries, from financial services to accounting to insurance to sales and marketing agencies. We even have nonprofits using our system, a very wide range of businesses. Our typical customer is an individual owner operator who might be running a small team, but we also are working on contracts with some much larger businesses looking to employ our systems for their business development and sales teams.
Mm-hmm. So when you say you now the Linked VA now is also nurturing leads, is this done by the AI component, or is this done by the onshore team?
It's done by the account managers themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
they not only edit your profile or the client's profile, but they also communicate with the leads to qualify them.
Yes. And oftentimes that's going to be a 6 to 8 to 10 message exchange on LinkedIn before it becomes something that you can actually do anything with in your direct CRM.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you're using Salesforce or Zoho or ActiveCampaign, I mean, we integrate with 99% of CRMs. We even have customers who don't have a CRM, believe it or not. Not that we're a proponent of that, but we can also create Google Sheets and simple email intakes so that there's an alert and it turns into an action that that client can actually take. Because it's pretty labor intensive to actually really work through initial contacts on LinkedIn, nurture those conversations to the point where there is action that can actually be taken.
Right. Do you use Sales Navigator to do that?
Yes.
Yes.
So you set up a Sales Navigator account, and then utilizing that system, we're able to run our campaigns, build your network. So whether you have 20 connections or 20,000 connections, we are able to increase the yield that you as a professional are able to take from your LinkedIn profile. So the idea is, wouldn't it be great if LinkedIn just worked, and instead of having to be in there and pay attention to it all the time, you just saw the outputs? Qualified lead looking for a 12-month consultation, qualified lead looking for actuarial advice, qualified lead looking to buy $2 million in 20-year term life insurance. And our system, and predominantly because it is driven by an actual physical team, very high contact rates, very high quality leads. So our monthly fees for an individual account are just under $700 US. To try to go
how
out.
many qualified leads can this bring a client?
That's a great question, Zarina, because you always want to look at your ROI. We have customers who will get 90 to 100 leads a month in an average month. We'll have other customers who get 6 to 10. But it really depends on the actual product at hand. Because you're selling a $50,000 consultation, how many of those do you really need per month in order to have a decent ROI? Not very many. If you're doing a $300 LLC formation, you need a much higher return in terms of number of leads. And so there tends to be a direct correlation between the average product sold in terms of the lead qualifying. And oftentimes the higher ticket sellers have a much more rigorous client focus. So they're looking in a particular market or a particular state, or they're looking for executives who only have C-level experience. And so the audience tends to be smaller when the product's ticket is higher. If it's a universal service such as CPA might offer, or a general casualty insurance broker, they're willing to talk to almost anybody. So they're not, and then do their own discovery. And so that is also really important to us. One of the things that we're offering, and something we wanted to make available to your viewers and listeners, is a free profile assessment of their LinkedIn profiles. So I'll be sending you a link that you can share. And what we do on a regular basis, and we do this for dozens and dozens of people on a daily basis who are interested in just what does their LinkedIn profile say about them? Is it an accurate reflection? And so our team has a ton of expertise in this space. They know the tricks of the trade. And so they will actually do a direct assessment of the account and then send back to the person not only that assessment, but also our guide on how to tune up their profile. So no obligation, doesn't cost.
Service, yeah. I will use it.
Yeah, sure.
Do you also do pages, LinkedIn pages, or just the profile of an individual?
We focus on the profiles. And we have a product that we're in testing with that also is heavily involved in regular content production. But we're not going to be ready to launch that probably until the third quarter. But that'll be another level of service. When we're working with teams, multiple accounts, we're able to drive the per seat monthly cost under $500. And so the thought that you can have someone manage and produce yield from your LinkedIn account for, less than $20 US a day, I mean, that's pretty significant. You'd be hard pressed to, find that on your own. And that's why we've found a real market for this opportunity and why we've had really explosive growth with it.
Yeah. You've been on the market for 4 months now, 4 or 5 months?
This is actually our seventh month.
Seventh month.
Yeah, seventh month. It's funny, the genesis on this, it's a quick story, but it was October of 23. I was actually September of 23. I was down in Los Angeles at the LA Convention Center, massive space. This was a digital marketing and small business expo. There were about 40,000 attendees. And I was one of the only people there as a speaker talking about LinkedIn. So there were a lot of people wanting to know, well, what about it? And what's so important? And why is it a priority? And I was articulating it, explaining it. At the time, my product was a do-it-yourself product. And I had an epiphany because I had 9 conversations with kind of mid-market companies. And when the onus was back on them to actually have to manipulate the system and focus on the outputs, almost everybody lost interest because they basically say, well, my team already is having enough time or tough time trying to get any yield, and this just seems like more work. And then I'm looking across the conference hall at all these other booths and spaces with lines, and they were all VA companies, virtual assistant companies, or remote accounting or remote HR. And so massive demand to take that responsibility off the plate. So I married the two concepts of remote management as well as LinkedIn as a priority for lead generation and married them into one company. Launched it 2 weeks later with all of the systems that we had already derived and built. And initially, our first beachhead market was actually the franchise industry. So franchise marketing is $1 trillion industry, and they're looking for qualified entrepreneurs who want to, buy their franchise concept, launch a new franchise. And this works really well for that industry and for that space. And so those were our first initial customers. And then we've basically doubled revenue every month. It's been and doubled our customer count. So, I mean, we are now at scale but we've been able to remain very affordable to the end user. And so we're looking forward to having 2024, be a real aggressive growth year for us.
Yeah, it sounds like an amazing product. I've been approached many times by exactly what you said, the 2 types of companies, either outsourced personnel somewhere in different places on Earth, or completely AI generated leads. And I've actually said no to both of them because probably the lack of trust. I don't know, it doesn't sound very legit. Talking about that, do you have any statistics already, ROI for the client ROI?
As you might suspect, most of our customers are not they're not publicly sharing that they're customers because it's sort of it's in the background. But if someone were to visit our website at linkedvanow.com, we do have a number of testimonials, and rather than give you a paraphrase of what they say, folks can go to the website and read for themselves. I mean, the number one thing that we're finding is that the quality of the lead that comes from LinkedIn is of a high quality and high in nature, because going back to the very beginning of this conversation, it's happening on LinkedIn where the conversation is already to a large degree pre-qualified because we're here to do business. It's funny. I advertise on all the social channels. I'm seeing tremendous growth right now spending on TikTok. But the truth is, in order to get to the good leads from TikTok, I have to pick through a lot of bad ones. It's still worth investing in, and it's an emerging market, and it's very interesting to our companies. But when we compare that to what we do on LinkedIn, there's almost no comparison.
Right.
LinkedIn leads tend to be of a much higher caliber. and they just tend to be ready to do business.
Mm-hmm.
And so what our system does is free the person, the account owner, up from the labor and tasks of actual lead cultivation and lead harvesting, and we do that work for you. And that's why that's become an important product. It's something I use every day in my existing companies in the various silos, and I've been doing so for many, many, many years. And I'm just excited that we turned it into a product that we've been able to bring to market for such an affordable price, because it allows entrepreneurs, to invest in this. And I'll be honest, our churn rate is very low, but we've lost customers. I mean, the day you sign your first customer is the day you lose your first customer. It's just the nature of a recurring revenue model business. But almost every time the exit interview with a lost customer is, this is a great system, I'm going to recommend it to this person and that person, it's just not right for me. And so oftentimes, if you're coming from an industry that just doesn't do as much business on LinkedIn, then you're not going to have the same level of success. I mean,
what are the typical industries that have success on LinkedIn?
So the typical industries are going to be finance, accounting, insurance, legal, basically think business services, professional services, real estate, investing, commercial and residential loans. So these are typically going to be individual entrepreneur-based businesses. And then we work with a myriad of sales teams, whether they're selling software, selling industrial products, but anything that is B2B, which certainly can thrive on LinkedIn, we are a great solution for that.
Fantastic, Charles. Thank you so much for this introduction to both of your businesses and to this amazing solution. You will send me the link, so I'll provide it below this video. And for anyone willing to read testimonials, go to linkedvanow.com.
Great. Thanks, Serena. I really appreciate the time.
I appreciate your input and your insights as well. Thank you, Charles.
Okay.
Are you struggling to make the right decisions for your business? Do you find yourself constantly changing strategies without seeing any significant impact? Join my free 60-minute session designed to unleash your genius and empower you to make brilliant decisions. Here's what you can expect to learn from the Genius Decision Making class. Activate both your logical and creative minds simultaneously to solve problems effortlessly. How to identify prime strategies for growth and profitability using your genius mind. Collaboratively construct profitable business models and strategies. Don't miss the opportunity to elevate your decision-making skills and drive growth in your business. Sign up on the link below or go to business-intuition.com for more information. Thank you for listening to Grow and Learn. We hope that you found our podcast informative, engaging, and inspiring.